Welcome to the Keene St. Louis orientation for new volunteers. First of all, we would like to thank everyone for coming. Keene is nearly completely volunteer run. We could not do the work that we do without you. Most of the people that you're going to be seeing today are volunteers. All of the volunteers are working one-on-one with our participants, and without the volunteers, we could not have a program.
Keene St. Louis has two staff members. Julie Softner is the executive director. Julie handles associating with Keene affiliates throughout the country, collaborating with Keene partners throughout St. Louis, and fundraising. Kristen Kramer is the program coordinator. Kristen manages program-related activities such as attending sessions, training new volunteers, supervising volunteers during sessions, and managing athlete retention. Keene's mission is to provide one-on-one recreational opportunities for children and youth with developmental and physical disabilities. Keene St. Louis is part of a national organization. There are 7 affiliates across the country, beginning with Keene, DC, which started in 1992, and spread to St. Louis in 2005. Keene is a unique organization in St. Louis for 3 main reasons. First, all of our Keene kids are paired one-on-one with a volunteer. For every service that we offer, we always have one volunteer paired with every single one of our kids. So we always maintain at least a one-on-one ratio. Depending on the number of volunteers we have, sometimes we'll have 2 volunteers for every Keene kid, but we always at least have one volunteer focused entirely on that one child to enable them to be fully engaged in the activity and to appreciate that focused attention from the volunteer. Because we have this one-on-one ratio, we are able to accept all children regardless of the extent of their disability. Some of our kids have some high need levels, and having that one-on-one volunteer attention really enables them to be involved in the activity. Additionally, all of our services are provided 100% free of charge to families. All Keene kids are between the ages of 5 and 21 years old. They have either a physical or developmental disability. Physical disabilities include visual or hearing impairments, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and spina bifida. Developmental disabilities include autism, Down syndrome, having a learning disability, or general developmental delay. For example, a child might be 14 years old, but may have the cognitive level of a 10-year-old. Other than having a disability, all Keene kids just want to have fun just like any child, and just like we did when we were their age. Keene swim sessions are recreational and non-competitive. Swim lessons are not provided. Rather, volunteers and their participants engage in a variety of fun swim activities in an open swim time. Session activities may include hitting inflatable balls back and forth, relaxing in the water, or diving for swim rings. Each swim session is typically 50 minutes in length. When volunteers sign up for swim activities that run for 2 or 3 hours, these sessions are broken up into multiple activities, wherein multiple groups of children will swim for 50 minutes each. Each swim activity of 50 minutes is set up similarly. The kids have roughly 45 minutes of open swim time where they can engage in any activity of their choosing. Then, in the last 5 minutes, we have hokey pokey time, in which everyone gathers together in a circle. Then, each child has the opportunity to tell the group what they did that day that they're proud of, and then we do a group rendition of the hokey pokey in the water. Volunteers should arrive at their activity 10 minutes prior to start time to review their athlete information. They'll meet their athlete on the pool deck, and then they'll have their open swim time. At the end of their session, they'll walk their child back to their parents. Athlete profile sheets are provided to volunteers prior to every session to give them information on the athlete for which they will be playing with for that session. Athlete profile sheets provide valuable information to volunteers. Starting on the left-hand side of the column, volunteers will learn first whether the athlete is at risk for running or wandering away. It'll either say yes, no, or will be blank. If it's blank, that means the parent did not complete this part of the form and the child is not at risk for running or wandering away. Below this section lists the child's diagnosis, which will provide the volunteer with information as to whether the child has specific needs that the volunteer will need to keep in mind when engaging the child. Further down on the left-hand side is a list of the child's helpful hints and their favorite activities. This information will allow the volunteer to fully engage the participant in the activities for that day. On the right-hand side of the sheet lists various behavioral difficulties of the child along with their communication styles. Next to expressive communication, it will either be listed as verbal, limited verbal, or nonverbal. Children who are listed as verbal will have a larger vocabulary and will be able to let the volunteer know what their needs are and will be able to more readily converse with the volunteer. Children who are listed as nonverbal will be unable to use words to communicate with their volunteer. There may also be other communication methods that the child utilizes listed under expressive communication. For children who are listed as limited verbal, they may range from only being able to answer yes or no questions to having a larger vocabulary but not choosing to utilize words to communicate with volunteers. So limited verbal children do have greater variety in the amount that they are able to communicate with their volunteer. Further down on the right-hand side lists toileting skills. For the most part, this will be listed as toilet trained, habit trained, or needs assistance. If it's toilet trained or habit trained, then the child will not need assistance if they need to use the restroom. If it is listed as needs assistance, then the athlete will need assistance by either a Keen staff member or their parent if they need to use the restroom. The athlete sheets are updated on a regular basis to provide additional helpful hints to the volunteers, and we do ask our volunteers to help us with updating them. If a volunteer notices specific activities that the child enjoys that's not listed on their sheet, or a technique that they used with the child that really helped engage them in the activity, please let a Keen staff member know so this information can be provided to future volunteers. It is also important for volunteers to keep in mind when reading the athlete profile sheets that this information was first provided by parents when they registered their child in Keen activities. While some of the behavioral problems listed on the sheet might be something that the parents see regularly at home, not everything will actually occur at a Keen session. If the child does have a major behavioral problem that the volunteer needs to keep in mind, then a Keen staff member will talk specifically to the volunteer so that the volunteer is fully prepared to work with the child. Restrooms are available for Keen athletes to use during sessions. Prior to every session, Keen volunteers should verify on the athlete profile sheet what is listed as the athlete's toileting skills, which is listed on the right-hand side of the athlete profile sheet. If the athlete indicates that they need to use the restroom during a session, and they are either habit trained or go to the toilet by themselves, then 2 Keen volunteers can escort the child to the restroom. At any point in time that the child is escorted outside of the designated play area, there should be at least 2 volunteers or 1 volunteer and a Keen staff member to escort them out of the designated play area. We do ask that volunteers do not enter the stall with the Keen child. Instead, the child should be able to utilize the restroom and wash their hands without assistance. If the athlete needs assistance in the restroom or the athlete profile sheet is unclear, then the volunteer should grab either a Keen staff member or a parent to escort the child to the bathroom. Some Keen participants are at risk for seizures. If your child is at risk for a seizure, it will be listed on the athlete profile sheet under diagnosis in the top left corner as either seizure disorder or epilepsy. Although seizures are not frequent at Keen sessions, they do happen occasionally, and it is important for volunteers to be aware of proper procedures for handling a seizure. If a child has a seizure while you are working with them, the most important thing for the volunteer to do is to grab a Keen staff member or the Keen child's parent, and they will handle the situation. However, volunteers can also turn the child on their side, loosen their clothing. Remember not to hold the child down, don't put anything in their mouth, but also provide cushioning for their head to make them as comfortable as possible. It is important that we allow the seizure to run its normal course. A volunteer should also time the seizure. If a seizure is over 5 minutes long, it is considered a major seizure, and that's when we would need to call 911. When working with a Keen kid, don't forget to ask questions at any point in time. Keen staff and parents are always available to answer any of your questions if you run into difficulties. Also, don't forget to ask the Keen kid questions. We try to engage the kids in the process as much as possible, and we want to make sure that we are asking our kids what they want to do rather than deciding for them. Don't forget to talk to your child. Having one-on-one work with our kids is a great opportunity to engage in conversation with kids, get to know them, and help increase their social skills. Also, don't forget to simplify our activities. For some of our kids, they learn best with simple questions or simple instructions. Maybe ask them a yes or no question, or ask them a question that has fewer options rather than open-ended questions such as, what do you want to do today? Don't forget to also show the child what you want them to do if they look like they are not understanding your question or instruction. If you want to help the child learn how to use a baseball bat, why don't you first show them how to use the bat rather than just telling them the instructions? Most importantly, don't forget to celebrate. Our kids love enthusiasm, they love high fives, and they love congratulations and good jobs. Use it freely. Many of our Keen kids are nonverbal, which will be listed on the right-hand side of the athlete profile sheet as expressive communication. If your child is nonverbal, don't forget to read about their favorite activities. This will be extra helpful for working with kids who are unable to communicate what their favorite activities are. Also, don't forget to prompt the child with a question and wait for a physical response. Just because they are not able to respond verbally does not mean that they're not able to respond. They will just find a different way to respond than by communicating with words. For many of our kids, it will be helpful to ask questions with more limited responses. For example, ask the child, do you want to play baseball, yes or no, rather than what do you want to do right now? Or you can physically hold equipment in front of them. For example, you can hold a baseball in one hand and a basketball in the other and wait for the child to pick physically which one they want to do. Most importantly, don't forget to talk to your Keen kid. Just because they're nonverbal and will not be responding verbally to you does not mean that they do not understand what you're saying. They definitely understand what you're saying and will be able to communicate back with you in a different way. Many Keen kids have autism. To know if your child has autism, please refer to the Keen athlete profile sheet. In the top left corner under diagnosis, it will either be listed as autism, autism spectrum disorder, or Asperger's. Children with autism need additional assistance in social interactions. They may want to interact with other children, but they may have difficulties knowing how to interact with them. In particular, they may need extra assistance knowing when it's their turn, for example, to kick the kickball or hit the tee off the bat, they might need additional assistance knowing how to join in an activity and also to verbalize what they need and want. Additionally, kids with autism are hypervigilant to loud noises or overactivity. If the child seems upset during an activity, be aware that they may need to move to a different part of the play area where it might not be as bright or there might be less activities going on. Kids with autism are also visually oriented. Rather than simply telling them an instruction or asking them a question, it may be helpful to show them something. Furthermore, kids with autism need additional assistance with structure and transitions. For some children, it is extra helpful to have a written schedule of what they will be playing with that day, whereas other children will need more help transitioning between activities and at the end of the session. In particular, it can be helpful to let kids know when there's 10 minutes left to play, or if they are riding a bike, it can be helpful to let them know when they have 5 more minutes left to ride the bike, rather than to simply ask them to get off the bike and not let them know when that transition is occurring. All kids have challenging behaviors, and our Keen Kids are no different. Challenging behaviors can be anywhere from an unsafe activity, such as the child leaving the designated play area or running on the pool deck, to aggression, when a child hits, slaps, or might talk negatively to a volunteer or another participant. If your child displays a challenging behavior, the first rule is to remind them of what the rule and the consequence is. For example, if they're running on the pool deck, we remind them that they are unable to run on the pool deck and that they have to walk. The consequence, they might slip and fall, or they might not be able to swim anymore. If the child continues to display the challenging behavior, then we would remove them from the situation causing the behavior. So if they're squirting someone with a squirt gun and we remind them to stop and they continue doing it, then we would simply take the squirt gun away from them. If the behavior still continues, that's when a Keen volunteer would need to grab a staff member to address the situation. And really, at any point in time, a volunteer can most definitely grab a staff member to help. We realize that our volunteers are there to be buddies and friends with the kids, and sometimes the volunteers don't want to have to yell at the child or have a consequence. Keen staff members are there to help the volunteers at any point in time. If the situation can be resolved without grabbing the staff member, please feel free to inform the staff member of the behavior at the end of the session. Most importantly, don't forget to have fun. Remember, a smile is contagious, and if our volunteers are having fun, our kids are sure to be having fun as well. And please, come join us for another session. You can sign up for a session in 2 ways. On the Keen website at www.keenstlouis.org, on the left-hand side, there's a link for volunteer registration. Additionally, once you have attended a session, you will be added to our email list and you will receive a reminder email the Monday before every session. There will be a link in this reminder email for volunteer registration. Thanks again for joining us as a Keen volunteer. Our kids are excited to play with you soon.